Hello, dear students. I, Mrs. Rajashree Naik, welcomes you again in online lecture series arranged by Gokhale Education Society's BYK College of Commerce, Nasik. Today, we will begin our lecture with chapter number 6, Population in India. So, students, in this lecture, we are going to study about introduction, trends in population growth, theories of population growth, stages of demographic transition, and expected questions. So let us see the introduction. India is a developing country. The rate of economic development of a country depends on its quantitative and qualitative growth, which can be measured in terms of population, national income, per capita income, etc. So just I said, India being a developing country faces several challenges like excessive population, unemployment, poverty, etc. If India is to be called economically developed country, then these basic challenges must be addressed on a priority basis. In this chapter, we propose to study nature and magnitude of population problem. Now, let us see the relationship between population and economic development is very complex. Conflicting opinions have been expressed by economists ever since the inception of the science of economics as to whether the growth of population is favorable or unfavorable for economic development of a country. Whether a growing population is an asset or a liability for the economy depends upon a number of factors such as the size of population, availability of capital and natural resources, techniques of production, etc. Population growth stimulated economic growth in America and European countries because the fact that these countries have abundant capital and other resources and possess latest techniques of production. So students, India's population, is it an asset or liability? In contrast, in developing countries like India, where there is excess population, scarcity of capital, and other complementary resources and technological progress is slow. Growing population retards economic growth instead of promoting it. If the growing population is not accompanied by high rates of capital formation and technological progress, there is bound to be mass unemployment, low rate of capital formation, low per capita income, and higher dependency ratio. Up to a certain limit, increase in population may be regarded as an asset, but it adds to labor force, but no sooner it crosses that limit, it breeds unemployment and poverty and thus become a liability. Okay, what I said, up to a certain limit, increase in population may be regarded as an asset to the country's economy as it adds to the labor force, but no sooner it crosses that limit, it breeds unemployment and poverty and thus becomes a liability. So there is a close relationship between the growing population of a country and its economic development. Now, what is population? Population refers to the number of people living in an area at a given point of time. Population of India is measured once in every 10 years through a census survey. According to 2011 census, India's population was 121.02 crores. India ranked second in the world next to China. India has 17.5% of the world population, but it occupies only 2.4% of the world's land area. Population statistics are compiled and published by the Office of the Registrar Central and Census Commissioner of India. Now, students, let us see the trends in population growth. India's population is very large in size. It is growing rapidly. Information regarding the size, structure, and other characteristics of India's population is obtained through census survey. Now, see the table number 6.1. Growth of population in India. 3 columns are there. Year, population in crores, and average annual growth rate in percent. Okay. Now, let us see the trends. First is marginal decline in population, period 1911 to 1921. There was a marginal decline in population from 25.2 crores in 1911 to 25.1 crores in 1921. Thus, there was negative growth rate due to spread of epidemics such as influenza, cholera, plague, malaria, etc. Now, second, year of Great Divide. The decadal growth of population was negative during the period 1911 to 1921. After 1921, there was a continuous increase in population. Hence, then Census Commissioner of India had designated the year 1921 as the year of Great Divide. 1921 as the year of Great Divide. Now, third trends we can say positive growth rate, year 1931 to 1941. India recorded an annual growth rate around 1 to 1.3 during this period. Fourth, increase in population 1951 onwards. Between 1951 to 1971, population increased from 36.1 crores to 54.8 crores. This shows that after independence, there was tremendous rise in population. Now, next trend, population explosion, 1971 to 2001. During this period, India experienced population explosion because during these 3 decades, annual population growth rate was more than 2%. And slow down, the last trend, slow down in population growth rate 2001 to 2011. There is an indication of slowdown in growth rate of population from 1.9% in 2001 to 1.4% in 2011. This shows that the average annual growth rate is declining. Okay, students. Now, let us see the theories of population growth. Now, the first theory, Malthusian theory of population growth. Okay. Thomas Robert Malthus propounded this theory in his book, An Essay on the Principle of Population in 1798, and modified same of its conclusions in the next edition in 1803. Malthus had tried to establish a mathematical relationship between the rate of growth of population and rate of growth of food supply. Okay, Malthus had tried to establish a mathematical relationship between the rate of growth of population and rate of growth of food supply. See the graph here. According to Malthus, population grows in geometric progression. Means what? 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. Whereas food supply grows in arithmetic progression. Means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mainly because food supply is subject to the operation of the law of diminishing returns. So Malthus states that the correction of the imbalance can be done by introducing preventive checks. Okay, what do we mean by preventive checks here? Preventive checks such as late marriage, moral restraint, self-control, simple living, etc., which helps to balance the population growth and food supply. Now, second, positive or natural checks. What Malthus says that the correction of the imbalance can be done by positive or natural checks. Robert Malthus also mentions about positive or natural checks, such as natural calamities include famines, earthquakes, flood, epidemics, etc. So natural checks operate and wash out the excess population, and this balance is maintained. But however, Preventive checks are more dependable out of the two. He said that unless preventive checks were exercised, positive checks would operate. This is true even today. Now, theory of demographic transition. Okay, what do you mean by the theory of demographic transition, students? The theory of demographic transition was given by A.J. Cole and E.M. Hoover in the book Population Growth and Economic Development in Low-Income Countries, 1958. According to this theory, every country passes through 3 stages of demographic transition, and this theory explains the transition from high to low birth rates and death rates. Now, let us see the next part, stages of demographic transition. The theory shows a 3-stage relationship between economic development and population growth. Relationship between students, economic development and population growth. According to this theory, as a country advances economically, its population passes through 3 stages as follows. First stage, low growth of population. In the first stage of demographic transition, both birth and death rates are high, and the population therefore remains almost stable over a long period. Agriculture is the chief occupation of the people, which is in a state of backwardness. The per capita income of the people is very low. As a result, they have a low standard of living, and bulk of the population is deprived of even the basic needs of life. A number of social, economic, and religious factors tend to keep the birth rates high in such primitive economies. Illiteracy, ignorance, irrational attitudes based on wrong social and religious beliefs are primarily responsible for high birth rate. Poverty is another factor that keeps the birth rate high. People prefer large families because children start earning at an early age and supplement the family income. Along with the high birth rate, the death rate is also high in such primitive economies because of limited medical and health facilities, poor diet, bad sanitation, and prevalence of famines and epidemics. Before 1921, India was in the first stage of demographic transition. Thus, in the first stage, high birth and death rate keep the population more or less stable. Okay, students? So, in the first stage, high birth and death rates keep the population more or we can say less stable. Now, second stage. The second stage is known as high growth of population. The process of economic growth starts in this stage. Development of agriculture, industry, trade, and transport generates more income and improves the standard of living of the people. Medical and health facilities improve, education spreads, and people get better diet, and all these improvements bring down the death rate. But the society is still primitive, tradition bound, and reluctant to break with past social institutions, customs, and beliefs. Consequently, the birth rate remains high, and in such a situation, when the death rate is declining and the birth rate continues to remain high, the gap between the two rates is widened and population starts rising rapidly. This is known as a period of population explosion. Okay, students, this is known as a period of population explosion. All developing countries, including India, are in the second stage of demographic transition. India is on the verge of entering into third stage. Now, third stage means low or stable population. In the third stage, the process of economic development is geared up. Industrialization leads to urbanization, and the people shift from villages to cities. Growing urbanization and widespread education changes the attitude of the people. They discard old customs and beliefs and become more conscious about maintaining a decent standard of life. They deliberately limit the size of their family and lowers the birth rate. Death rate is low on account of better medical and health facilities. Since both birth and death rates are low, the population remains more or less constant. All developed countries are in this stage. Okay, students, now let us see the next part. See the we can see the diagram, see the figure. The demographic transition in 5 stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and stage 5. Now, next part, birth rate and death rate in India. Now, students, what do you mean by birth rate? What do you mean by death rate? Birth rate. Birth rate means the number of births occurring per 1,000 of living population during a year. It is also known as fertility rate. Okay, students, birth rate means the number of births occurring per 1,000 of living population during a year. It is also known as fertility rate. And what do you mean by death rate? The number of days per 1,000 of the living population during a year is called as death rate. It is also called as mortality rate. Okay, now see the table number 6.2, birth rate and death rate in India, year, birth rate and death rate. Before 1921, both birth rate and death rate were high. The birth rate was high mainly in the rural areas because of the social beliefs and customs. Every addition to the family was welcome as a gift of providence. The cost of education was low, expenditure of rearing up children was minimum, and women's major responsibility was to procreate and take care of children. The death rate too was high because the poor diets, unhygienic conditions, and the absence of effective preventive and curative medical information. Since both the birth rate and death rate were high, the size of population remained small and the rate of growth of population was relatively slow. Both the birth rate and death rate were high and the size of population remained small and the rate of growth of population was relatively slow. However, since 1921, the situation has undergone a change. The rate of growth of population has increased, and this is because death rate has fallen faster than the birth rate. Okay, the rate of growth of population has increased. This is because death rate has fallen faster than the birth rate, and this is because through both the birth rate and death rate have fallen, the death rate has fallen faster than the birth rate. Okay, the death rate has fallen faster than the birth rate. Okay, now see the figure. Just I said that the birth rate or the death rate has fallen faster than the birth rate. Now see the figure 6.2, demographic transition, birth rate and death rate in India. The blue color curve indicates the declining trend in death rate. Okay, students. Okay, see the figure number 6.2. The blue color curve indicates the declining trend in death rate, and the red color curve indicates the declining trend in birth rate. And the growing gap between the two curves is indicative of the net addition to the existing size of population. Okay, so the growing gap between the two, between the birth rate and death rate, the two curves is indicative of the net addition to the existing size of population. So students, this figure explains the phenomenon of population explosion. This figure explains the phenomenon of population explosions caused by increasing wide margin between very slowly declining birth rate and fast falling death rate. Now students, expected questions on today's content. Explain the stages of demographic transition. Explain the stages of demographic transition. So students, in today's lecture, we have covered introduction part of the chapter, trends in population growth, theories of population growth, stages of demographic transition, and expected questions on the same. In the next online video lecture, we will go with the next part of chapter number 6. Till then, have a great time and thank you.